Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Link's interim results briefing, which we are hosting via webcast in consideration of the recent public health and social distancing measures. We are pleased to have with us today our CEO, Mr. George Hong Choi, CFO, Mr. Kok Seong Ng, and Mr. CSO, Mr. Eric Yao. During the course of the webcast, you may submit your questions on the webcast portal, and the questions will be conveyed to the management team during the Q&A session. I will now turn over to George, our CEO. George, please.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen. There are a few questions coming in from the webcast, and I guess a lot of the questions are quite alike from a few of the analysts. So I'll just read out once. Allow me to consolidate your wording. So the question from Cousin of JP Morgan, Hildy Ling of Morgan Stanley, Mark Leung from UBS, and also Ken Young from Citi, they're all asking about the tenant support scheme. So how has it been accounted for in our P&L and our DPU, and how much has been utilized? And the follow-up question on this would be, do you see a potential increase in such amount?
As of today, I think a large chunk of the tenant support scheme has been utilized, and the support comes across in various functions. But specifically on the tenant support scheme, from an accounting perspective, currently the accounting adjustment is needed in the distribution. So first, the rental concession pertaining to rent has been amortized to the remaining lease, as we've explained before. And there's another portion regarding management fees and car park concessions that are expensed in this current financial period. And because, in a way, the MPI looks understated vis-a-vis cash, so there's a distribution adjustment at this point. Carrying on is the fact that the trust deed today allows only an asymmetrical treatment, where the deduction is there, but to add back subsequent years is not. And this is something together the board will consider to correct it, and subject to unit holders' support. If we table it, then we will adjust it in the subsequent years.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, PS. Next question from Hildy of Morgan Stanley. So on Hong Kong retail, is there any color of the recent retail sales trend and rental reversion in Hong Kong? Should we expect sequential improvement versus the second quarter or the second half comparing to the first half of this financial year?
The worst months have been July and August in Hong Kong, and obviously that has an impact, but looking forward, we see the gradual relaxation of social distancing rules. The tenant sales have improved over the last 2 months, and if there is no further sort of wave of infection, then we hope that the worst is over, and then we see a stabilization. Obviously, with rental reversion discussion with tenants, it's comparing with the lease that was struck some years ago, and so it really depends on the data that we get for individual tenants, their occupancy, cost of sales, their business prospect. Certain trade are obviously more challenged than others. For example, Chinese restaurant, but obviously we already seen some very good improvement in the last 1 or 2 months.
Okay, next question is from Cousin as well. So what is the impact of the LTI reversal? Because the P&L seems to be affected by the reversal and the DPU also. So can you share a little bit on what is the staff cost change, excluding the LTI reversal?
I think if you look at the LTI impact this year, or this first half year, because of the LTI from the previous years, and then we did the modeling and the consultant came back, we have a reduction in about 90 million in terms of the LTI provision. But if you look at the base salary, there's a slight increase of about 6-8%, first half to first half, accounting for the headcount and all the increased activities that we are looking for in terms of the Vision 2025.
Okay, next question on Hong Kong retail also, the destination malls occupancy, which seems to have declined further to 92.3%. Should we expect further decline in the upcoming few months given the retail weakness, or do you have any concerns on the occupancies at both community and neighborhood shopping centers as well?
Sure. Destination mall, because there are only very few of them, there are only 6 destination malls, so the numbers can be skewed by the performance of 1 or 2 malls. And partly because Lok Fu was recently out of as an enhancement, so the occupancy was not have not stabilized yet, and also because of the departure of certain tenants in TOP in Mongkok. So the occupancy for destination malls particularly was suffered in this first half. We do expect once the market stabilizes and the post AE stabilization and the market stabilize, the destination mall occupancy should be better. We haven't seen any mass exodus of tenants within our portfolio in Hong Kong, and the rest of the portfolio, the community and the neighborhood malls are still pretty resilient and still pretty stable.
The policy that we have implemented is to ensure that there is high occupancy. Obviously, that will mean that we have to be somewhat flexible with some tenants in terms of rental reversion and concession. At the same time, if you look at the number of new tenants that have opened up, started operation at Link's portfolio in Hong Kong, close to 200 tenants have started business since the beginning of this year. So we have continuous demand to make sure that we can actually replace tenants that are not performing, allowing us to have a support to the impact on our revenue, rental revenue.
Thank you. Next question is on the China portfolio. So is there any color about the recent rental reversion and tenant sales for retail? And for office negative reversion, should we expect it to continue in the second half of this financial year?
For China, the performance has been pretty stable. We still managed to achieve positive reversions with the expiring leases, and we hope to sustain that for the second half. As you know, the recovery of China after the pandemic has been quite swift, and our footfall and tenant sales have both been doing quite well in the recovery period, and we sure hope the recovery and the good performance will sustain towards the second half. As for the office reversion was negative because of more supply in the Shanghai office market, and but it was still a very sustainable level, we think, given the cost, the rental cost for Ling Square in Shanghai, and we still managed to achieve a pretty decent occupancy. And we've also just been able to sign the renewal of the lease with our anchor tenant in Ling Square, and that lease is supposed to expire in 2021, but the tenant pre-committed to the extension of 10 years. This is evident of the strength of the location and the quality of the building in Puxi, sorry. So pretty positive with the overall performance of our office in Shanghai.
Well, the mainland government have lifted all the lockdown restrictions last week for all the different trade except gym and KTV, and cinema still 75% capacity limit, but otherwise all the trades are back to normal. So this will support our tenants a lot. The two properties that are affected a bit more is Roosevelt Plaza, which see you would expect a more severe lockdown in Beijing, and Central Walk in Shenzhen is affected by us closing down some part of it as we started our asset enhancement project at that particular property.
Thank you. Next question is from Justin from Goldman on asset enhancement. So on asset enhancement in Hong Kong, the budget seems to have shrunk quite a lot. Is that an intended cash preservation amid COVID, or is it because of a lack of viable projects available? And the next question is also on AE, which is specifically about Central Walk. What is the expectations on Central Walk and the target ROI?
The target ROI will continue to be similar to Hong Kong, as we, when we invest, we don't really make a distinction across geography. So, we're targeting double-digit return for the investment. We're looking at around sort of 300 million RMB type investment for Central Walk. And for Hong Kong, we have completed quite a lot of projects over the years. We've been doing this for 15 years. We have now a lot of the properties where we don't need to do the type of asset enhancement work in terms of changing corridors and adding staircases and all that. But tenancy work continues, so we believe that we can continue to re-tenant and improve our rental income without some of the major capex that we need in the past. So we hope that will become sort of a more perhaps mundane type asset management type work than having very drastic wholesale change to the layout, etc., to the properties.
Okay. Next question is from Daniel of Timber Creek. Could you give us an update on TOP in Mong Kok? And further, there are rumors that Morgan Stanley is downsizing in London. Can you comment how this will impact the Cabot? Are there any intention to dispose any kind of assets in the portfolio in the near future?
The first question about TOP. TOP, there are two portions. There's a tower portion and then also the retail podium portion. The tower portion is doing quite well, and in terms of tenancies and occupancy. The retail podium has suffered slightly, as I mentioned earlier, due to some larger tenants vacating. And we are getting more pop-up stores opening in TOP, and also the reopening of the food court in the basement soon. So we do expect the performance of the retail podium of TOP to recover gradually as we move on the second half of this year. As for the Cabot in London, there is talk about the anchor tenant assessing its office needs. But from our understanding, the such assessment exercise takes quite many years to plan, and the impact won't be apparent until quite some years from now. And both the Cabot in London as well as 100 Market Street in Sydney have a WALE of close to 10 years, and from very credible first-rate Grade A tenants. So given the long WALE of both assets, we are not concerned about the overall occupancy of those two offices.
Next question comes from Philip of Bocom. The question is on buyback. Is there any further update on the buyback plan?
No, we do not intend to announce a budget for buyback in this environment. We are done with the buyback pertaining to the previous disposals. But going forward, I think buyback remains an ad hoc feature. As and when we think the market does not appreciate the price of linked units, we will come in to defend, and we have the capacity to do that.
Okay, one more question from Philip, which is on car park. The drop in car park revenue, was it mainly due to the drop in hourly car park, or what's the split between the impact on drop in monthly car park versus the hourly parking income?
I think broadly, both monthly and hourly had been impacted. Clearly, the hourly is about 2/3 to 70% of the impact was from the hourly. The balance was from the monthly car park.
Thank you. One more question from Ken. Is there any update on the Vision 2025 goal on achieving high single-digit CAGR in AUM, in portfolio growth?
Strategically, that's still the direction we're going. And as you've heard, our idea of having core plus assets and then some value add. Since we completed the development of Quayside, which is I guess you call that a more opportunistic type asset, we do need to add a little bit more towards the value add opportunistic asset to give us the growth rather than an increase in the percentage towards core and core plus. We will continue to look for those opportunities, but the direction will continue, and we perhaps the best way is we can talk about two endpoints, from here to there, whether we can do a consistent percentage growth every year. I think that's a tall order. So we'll probably have some slow years, some years where we can catch up. But the end point is still in sight.
Thank you. There is a question on the e-commerce impact on Link's Hong Kong portfolio. What do you see as the impact from the e-commerce on Hong Kong portfolio in the long term? What countries are considered to have seen more impact from e-commerce?
Okay. It is a bit difficult to predict on the long-term impact of e-commerce. I mean, the currently, despite COVID-19 pandemic and the concerns over a lot of people shifting to online ordering, what we have seen so far is once the social distancing measures have been removed, people are eager to go back out to shop and to eat and to dine and to meet people. So we were witnessing, as with the rest of the world, a shift towards online ordering, online shopping, and then now we've seen the tenant sales picking up again. So hard to say that the e-commerce will really overtake physical shopping in the long run. But we have seen some trends in terms of of course, there's more ordering from restaurants, but even online. But even with those online orders, those are fulfilled in the physical restaurants in the mall. So we do actually capture it in our tenant sales as well. So it is still a trend that is being monitored closely by us here at Link, whether in Hong Kong or in China. As with other geographies, of course, you see e-commerce pretty much overtaking a lot of the physical retail in London. We don't have a retail asset in UK, London or UK yet, but we having bought the Cabot in London, of course, this is a market that we are studying quite closely as well, but we do see e-commerce having a much more significant impact in the UK retail market and gradually in the European retail market than in Hong Kong. Whereas in China, where e-commerce has always been a staple, again, our retail assets are doing relatively well with very good footfall and very good tenant sales recovery post COVID-19 pandemic. So I think in the end it's still a matter of location, a matter of getting the right tenants, having the right product mix, and doing the right marketing efforts, so to draw people in to make it still a relevant shopping destination for people and families to go.
The way we have participated in with the e-commerce, so online shopping, In Hong Kong and China, we've added lockers for delivery. We have some of these companies actually opening at our shopping center. Some of the online retailers actually have decided to have physical presence, and we have actually attracted quite a lot of them to open at our malls, both in Hong Kong and China. So I think as people move more towards omni-channel rather than one or the other, then it's really whether we have a good proposition for them in terms of location, in terms of footfall to attract them to come and open shops, and our tenants also have to change the model to make sure that they can have a good online and offline experience which is integrated.
Thank you. In view of time, I'll read out 2 more questions and we'll end the session. Next question is about acquisition. Where should we expect to see the next acquisition in terms of country, regions?
In terms of strategy, as you see in the slides this time round, we no longer put percentages against any country as guidance. We actually, through our analysis, believe that it is more important to look at type of return we can get from certain assets, whether it's core plus or value add. We would apply the same discipline to look at different assets across various geography. So our team is still very active looking at different acquisition opportunities. A little bit more challenging, obviously, for UK, Australia, etc., where there is travel restrictions. In China, part of our investment team is based in China, and they are traveling freely to look at various opportunities. So that, I guess, give us a little bit more freedom to look at opportunities that arise in Hong Kong and China. But beyond that, a little bit more challenging because of the travel restrictions.
Thank you, George. The last question is on REIT code consultation. The new REIT code consultation is under review by SFC. Once the consultation is done, should we expect Link to have a change in strategy due to the change in the regulations? And can you share a bit more on your thought about China REIT?
We're very happy and we welcome with the SFC changing or amending the REIT code, but our strategy is not determined by the REIT code consultation and the subsequent changes. I mean, our strategy is as described in the Vision 2025, but the REIT code amendment does give a bit more flexibility in terms of investments, and but that won't. We won't be guided by it, but it does give on the fringe a bit more flexibility, and we do welcome more flexibility in the regulatory environment to ensure not just Link but the Hong Kong REIT market does have a healthy growth projectile going forward. I forgot the second question.
China REIT.
Yeah.
China REIT code. Thank you. The China REIT regime, there's been a lot of talk about it in the last 10, 15 years, and we do hope to see the first proper China REIT being launched. But from what we understand, the REIT regime initially in China would be focusing on very much infrastructure assets, and but we do hope the gradual development of the REIT regime in China and the REIT market in China means there will be more participants in the market, more flourishing of whether it's analysts, investors, and the product itself. And we think as a product, the REIT product is actually very attractive for the growing aging population and the needs of pension funds and insurance money in the region. So we do think overall the long-term effect of the China REITs will be helpful in developing the market overall in general.
All right, thank you very much, and thank you everyone for joining us today through the webcast. Looks like we're still going to meet most of you online, and hopefully we'll meet each and every one of you in person very soon. Thank you very much again. Again, if you do have any more questions, please feel free to contact any one of us of the IR team. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.